Welcome to the grand finale of the Battle Network series, Megaman Battle Network 6. Battle Network 6 is widely considered to be one of the best in the series, a true return to form for the series' swan song. This game brings back the Battle Network format of the original trilogy, eschewing the gimmicks of the prior two entries. This game is, in many ways, the true successor to Battle Network 3. It's definitely a more suitable successor than 4 or 5 ever was. Now, I have actually not played this game since it first came out stateside in 2006, 18 years ago, and that's thanks to a bug that thankfully has been fixed in the Legacy Collection. So, as with the last two games, I'll be playing one version as my main game, that being Cybeast Gregar, and I'll add in the relevant parts of Cybeast Falzar where appropriate. So, enough of the preamble, let's get started. This game gives the series a completely new locale, no more AC/DC Town, until the very end that is. Instead, we're in the big city, the Windy Apple as some call it, Central Town. With this new town comes mostly new characters, and with them comes some actual real character development that we never got out of the original characters. We got Mick, a tough-as-nails rebel who is jealous of Lan because he's new? Tab, the son of the owner of the new chip shop, and the mysterious girl Iris, who shows up from time to time, yet she'll still have more personality than Melu does. The first boss is very easy. Blastman has 3 main attacks, a traveling explosion, a fire tornado, and a firestorm. The fire tornado has a very obvious tell, and the firestorm can be easily blocked by the cubes on the field. The explosion is a bit more problematic as it doesn't have a visual warm-up, but it travels slow enough that you should be able to get out of the way if you're paying attention. So really none of his attacks are any threat in this fight. He's fairly slow and it's easy to find opportunities to hit him. Blastman might actually be the easiest first boss in the series since Fireman in Battle Network 1. Case in point, I beat him without getting hit. Oh my god, I forgot about this. This is the second dungeon. It's effectively a remix of the Beastman stage from Battle Network 3, just with more annoyances. For this stage, you have to figure out which one of these little progs goes in which tank based on a small hint they give. This isn't too hard because you can just save scum it, or you can ask Lan to go and get info at any time. But before you can do that, you have to make it back to the tanks with the little prog guy alive. That means avoiding the sharks that spawn all over the area. If a shark hits you, then the prog is sent back to where it was, and you have to go get it and try again. Personally, I didn't find this to be terribly hard, perhaps I just got lucky, but I was able to memorize a quick path back to the tanks without many sharks in the way. Also, I save scum the shit out of the stage. But just because it was easy for me doesn't mean I can't see how it wouldn't be a massive headache for some people. The boss of this dungeon is Dive Man, and as with the last boss, he is very easy. His gimmick is that you can't hit him while he's underwater, but he pops up frequently, and when he does, it's easy to get a hit off on him. He has 3 attacks, the missiles, which is the most common attack, the bombs, and the wave crash. All of this is incredibly easy to manage if you're paying just a smidgen of attention. The bombs are launched at one panel, the wave crash only affects the first 2 rows, and the missiles go in a straight line. As long as you're not overreacting, this shouldn't be too hard. But even if you do take damage, it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, the few times I got hit, it was because I found it more valuable to take the hit so I could get a hit off on Dive Man in the process. So simply put, just keep your head in the game and this guy should be a breeze. Now is when the plot of this game really starts to kick off. This jackass decides to awaken the legendary Cybeasts, the Cybeasts who wreaked havoc on the cyberworld before destroying themselves and creating this massive crater in the cyberworld. Now, I just have a quick question about this. How? They're programs. Delete them. Just remove access to that part of the internet. I mean, sure, someone could probably still access it, but it wouldn't just be out in public. Anyway, she revives them, captures one, but is unable to capture the other one, allowing Megaman to use his main character powers to capture that one instead. This chapter is also when we get introduced to our first version-exclusive navis, and we get introduced to the cross system. So let's talk about the cross system. The cross system is this game's replacement for the double soul mechanic of the last 2 games, and it's effectively the same thing, but better. The way you activate a cross is you press up on the D-pad and then select the cross you want, and then you have it for the rest of the battle. It's that easy. You can also swap crosses whenever you like, but you can't use the same cross multiple times in the same battle. It should go without saying, this is eons better than the double soul. But it gets better, because shortly after getting your first Navi cross, you get one of the coolest mechanics the series has ever had. The fucking Beast Cross. Depending on your version, you will either get the Gregar or Falzar Beast Cross, but regardless of which version you have, activating Beast Cross turns Mega Man into a machine of rage and death. When you use chips, you teleport in front of the enemy you're targeting, or you can power up the chip and do a claw attack instead. And the Buster becomes a fucking machine gun in Gregar, and in Falzar you get a 3-wide projectile range. Now, this only lasts 3 turns, but who cares? 3 turns is more than enough to make use of this, and all you have to do is hit the Beast Mode button. That's it. On top of that, you can also use one of your Navi crosses with your Beast cross to get a special Beast version of that cross, because they just had to make it even better. Now, there are some caveats. As I mentioned before, you only get it for 3 turns. You can activate it again afterwards, however, if you choose to do so, Megaman goes nuts and plays by himself for 1 turn. Afterwards, his HP drops rapidly to 1, and no amount of recovery chips will fix that. Not to mention, you can't just use it in every battle. After using it once, you have to wait a bit before it recharges. But again, 3 turns is more than you'll need to make use of this. One of the cool things about this game is that you can play as other Navis actually for real this time, meaning that after you've unlocked them, you can go wherever you want on the net with them. Now, their HP remains static, and there are things you can't do with them like job requests and story missions, but other than that, do whatever you want. So moving on to this chapter's boss fights, first up is the final appearance of serial arsonist and convicted terrorist, Mr. Match. He's a teacher now. I guess they were looking for someone with a violent streak and a wanton disregard for human life. With Mr. Match comes a rematch with his Battle Network 2 Navi, Heatman. Heatman is kinda tricky. He has 3 basic attacks, the Firewall, the Flamethrowers, and his Slam Down attack. The Fire one is the tricky one to deal with. It travels down all 3 rows, and dodging it requires absolute perfect timing. You have to move forward as soon as it leaves the panel in front of you. What's more is he'll spawn these Flamethrowers from the back of your field while the Firewall is heading towards you, so even if you dodge the wall, you might get torched by a Flamethrower. All in all, he's not hard, but he's a welcome challenge. Now in Cybeast Falzar, you will instead get a rematch from Battle Network 4, Aquaman. And he's only slightly harder than he was in that game. His main attacks are basically the same. He has a water gun that is a non-issue, and he swapped his hydro cannons for a big hose. And that is only slightly more threatening than his last encounter. His only real worrisome attack is the sprinkler attack, when he jumps into the middle of your field and shoots water while rotating. This move is tricky to dodge, however it doesn't do a lot of damage, so if you get hit it's not that big of a deal. So he's only slightly more threatening than his Battle Network 4 version, but he's still not a threat and he's still almost effortless to beat. Oh god. The memories of this part just came flooding back. And they aren't pleasant ones. I fucking hate this part. You have to destroy all these evil spirits in each area of the cyberworld to continue. But you can't beat them in a normal battle, you instead have to do this minigame to destroy them. You get a few weapons to choose from, an axe, a dagger, a sword, and a cannon, all with different areas of effect. Each weapon has a limited amount of uses, so you have to be strategic with how to use them. The spirits have 3 colors that correlate how many hits it'll take to kill them. Red equals 1, yellow 2, and blue 3. If you hit one of the spirits from behind, it dies immediately. This part isn't hard, it's fairly easy to figure out how to get rid of all the spirits efficiently. I never failed the part once, it's just tedious. And they make you do this in every section of the cyberworld you have access to, with 2 different Navis. Yay. The next story boss is Circus Man, and he's deceptively easy. His main attack is that he'll summon hands to clap you, or he'll summon a tiger to jump through a hoop and attack you. This isn't hard to deal with, but his attacks trigger so fast that it can catch you off guard. But once you understand the rhythm of the fight, managing this becomes much easier, and at that point, he's a breeze. His only other attack is that he'll occasionally become a tent, trap you inside himself, and beat the shit out of you, which I'm assuming is someone's kink, but this attack is much slower and easier to avoid. I should mention that they brought back the minigames from Battle Network 4, though technically they're optional because you don't have to do them. Unless you actually want all the Navi crosses. Most of them are quick and forgettable, but they're not as much of a headache as they were in Battle Network 4, with the exception of a few. Aquaman's section being one of the particularly annoying ones. And then there's this Tengu Man section. You have to find 4 scrolls in both sections of the Greentown cyberworld. While you're searching, crows will constantly be swarming around you. If you get hit, the stage resets. You can scare them off with this whirlwind, but you only get 5 uses, and the crows swarm way more often than that. You can recharge it by finding these leaves, but sometimes they're located in such a spot that you have to immediately use 1 charge after finding a leaf. Once you know where all 4 scrolls are, it's not that hard, but learning where they are and the best route to take requires some trial and error, and it is very freaking annoying. Next up is Slash Man, one of the coolest looking Navi designs in the series. As you can see, he moves very fast and his attacks can be difficult to dodge, the spinning boomerang in particular. However, he doesn't do a lot of damage per hit, and the amount of damage you can do with the Beast Cross makes getting hit almost a non-factor, which unfortunately seems to be a trend in this game. And that's all I really have to say about him. Tengu Man is a bit harder than Slash Man. He doesn't leave you a lot of room to hit him when he's not moving, and his attacks trigger so fast there's a high chance you end up getting the short end of the stick if you try to hit him in his warm-up. However, that isn't that big of a deal because of the Beast Cross teleport ability, so you can just shoot him in the face whenever you want to. And the fact that the Falzar Buster is a 3-wide spread makes it very easy to deal passive damage to him. Remember how I said in the last video that Team Colonel was the canon version of Battle Network 5? I didn't go into it much then because there really was no way to illustrate why that is the case, until we get to this part in Battle Network 6. See, Colonel and Barrel have started working for World 3. Yes, they're back again. Well, this game treats it as though Lan and Barrel have a history together, which could not in any way be true if Team Proto-Man were canon, as they only have one brief interaction in that game. Next up is Judge Man. This guy is pretty simple. His most threatening attacks are the demon books he summons and the big book shield he spawns. The books converge on your location from both sides, making it hard to avoid them, and the book shield not only shields him from damage, but also launches different elemental attacks at you each time it's damaged. However, both of these are very easy to destroy if you're using the Beast Cross. Other than that, his arsenal is easy to manage and he gives you plenty of opportunities to hit him. So he's easy. Remember Electric Man? He's the guy from the notoriously bad power plant stage in Battle Network 1. Well, he's our next cross-navi. I wonder what his little minigame is going to be like. You can't be serious. Yes, they actually did this. They rehashed the mechanic from the most notoriously bad stage in the entire series. Now, I'm not about to say it's just as bad as that stage. You only have to find 8 batteries across 2 separate areas of the cyberworld, but you have to do so while avoiding these zombie navis. When you get hit, they zap some charge from you. Each time you lose charge, the circle of light around you gets smaller. If you lose all charge, the stage resets. This is incredibly annoying and unnecessary, but that's never stopped these devs before. Electric Man is pretty easy, in his first matchup at least. He throws a lot at you, he'll fly towards you and hit you with a sword, he'll spawn these 2 transformers which redirect his shock cannon attack, and his trickiest attack is the lightning bolts, which highlight the set of panels it's going to hit before triggering. That's all 3 sets of panels it's going to hit, so you have to remember what panels were highlighted and in what order to effectively dodge it. He has potential, however he does so little damage that you can pretty much just tank hits and wail on him. In Falzar, we get one of 2 returning navis from Battle Network 5, Tomahawk Man. Similar to Electric Man, he throws a lot at you. He has 2 big tomahawk swings, a 4-panel and a 6-panel, a boomerang that only actually hits your back row, and a panel cracking attack. But this is easy to manage, and as with the Electric Man fight, taking damage is such a non-factor that you can just tank the hits and wail on him. The next story boss is Element Man, and this guy is easy even by this game's standards. His gimmick is that he switches between elements, and he has different attacks for each element. Wood Tower for wood, meteors for fire, lightning for electric, and ice breath for water. This can be a little tricky, but any challenge that may have offered is immediately nullified by just how easy it is to get the upper hand on him. He always changes elements in the exact same order, so it's not hard to strategize for that. Plus, you have at least one cross in each version that allows you to get an immediate elemental advantage on him. So with all the double damage you'll be doing, this guy will fall fast. And now for another of the coolest looking navis in the series, Erase Man. He has one of the coolest looking cross forms in the game as well, and one of the best cross abilities. As a boss, however, he is easy as fuck. I'm gonna start sounding like a broken record here. His main issue is that he deals so little damage, and you deal so much damage that taking damage is inconsequential. His biggest threats are the ghosts and the seek and stun attack. The former are easily annihilated by the Gregar buster, and the latter does so little damage that it's more of an annoyance than a threat. So, yet again, you can kinda just tank hits and wail on him. And for the final Navi cross in Gregar, we have one of the silliest designs in the series, Charge Man. Charge Man does a lot of stuff that could be threatening. He chugs on by while firebombing you, he sends his rail yard posse after you, and if that doesn't work, he just charges at you really quick a few times. But he's always going in a straight line, and literally anything aside from the basic buster shot will knock him out of his attack animation. And getting counter hits on him is extremely easy. So quite literally, any straight line attack will demolish him, pretty much nullifying any threat he could have posed. On the Falzar side, we get Ground Man, and this guy can appear to be more difficult than he is until you realize the trick to the fight. Most of his moves involve him turning into a drill, the most problematic of them being his primary move where he first disappears then drills up from under you. This attack triggers very fast, and as such it can be hard to dodge. He also moves around just quick enough that it's hard to efficiently hit him, until you realize that you can hit him in his drill form. So the fight becomes a simple rhythm of waiting for him to do his drill attack, stepping back one panel, and then attacking. The rest of his arsenal is pretty easy to manage. He's basically a slightly more complex version of Drill Man from Battle Network 3. And for the final cross in the Falzar version, you get Dust Man. Dust Man is very slow and easy to manage. His main attack is that he'll cough up a Garbage Man. Garbage Man is in a man made of garbage, not a garbage man. Anyway, This thing will fly at you and punch you, and it's very easy to avoid. He'll usually follow that up by spitting debris at you. This is also very easy to avoid. And finally, he'll suck you in and clamp you, which sounds like it'd be tricky, but it's not. 0% of his arsenal is an actual threat. This guy was so easy, I beat him on my first try in 2 turns. Motherfucker. Next up, we fight Beast Cross Megaman. For this fight, you can choose which one of your cross navies you want to fight him with. His Gregar version is very fast. His main attack is a swipe attack. Sometimes he'll swipe once, sometimes twice. Some of the swipes can stun you. Once you're stunned, he'll machine gun you, and if that fails, he'll shoot a thunderball at you and stun you that way. He's fast and aggressive, he's hard to hit and hard to manage. He leaves just enough time after attacking for you to hit him, so you have to anticipate the openings and get yourself into position without getting hit in the process. This is both the hardest and the most fun fight in the game. Unfortunately, I no longer have the footage of the Falzar crossfight. My recording got corrupted and I had to grab my backup, but my dumbass forgot I had recorded this session in 2 parts, and I only grabbed the backup for the first part. The Falzar crossfight, as well as the 2 Navi fights before it, were in the second part, and I deleted backups for both of them before realizing my error. So that one's on me. And immediately after that fight, and I mean immediately after, no chance to save or anything, you fight Colonel. Colonel is more like his first fight in Battle Network 5 than his late-game beefed-up version. He's definitely still a threat, but he moves slow enough and gives you plenty of openings to hit him. His arsenal is also easier to manage. The slash attack will be your biggest hurdle, but it's much easier to dodge. His other 2 attacks are easy to manage as well, as all you have to do is simply step out of the way. He is still a threat, but not a huge threat. And now we get the big plot twist. Iris, the quiet girl who seems to always show up at just the right time, is actually a net navi. Specifically, she has a program for controlling military technology. She's also working for World 3, and she's Colonel's sister. The game has actually been hinting at this the entire time. For example, whenever she was around, the copybot at the school was missing, and in the second chapter she points to a copybot for Lan to use before disappearing. In other instances, she's been able to control technology as well as calm Megaman when he's in his beast form. But thanks to Lan's kindness, she chooses to betray World 3 and fight alongside you and Colonel to defeat the Cybeasts. And now, we move on to the final boss, which is different depending on the version. In Cybeast Gregar, you fight Gregar. Gregar sports a 2500 HP bar, most of any main game boss in the series. He's almost constantly jumping around, which causes rocks to fall from the sky, making it hard to take advantage of the already very small windows he gives you to hit him. The only time he'll stay still is when he's attacking, and it's not any easier to hit him then either. He'll launch a shock attack that hits 5 to 6 panels depending on the shape of the spread, a huge fire breath attack that hits the back 2 rows in their entirety, and occasionally he'll double swipe and throw his face at you. He attacks often and his attacks trigger fast. This fight is about patience, and you need a lot of it. Dodging his arsenal while also trying to find openings can become frustrating, but once you learn the rhythm of the fight, it becomes much easier to manage. Now, in Cybeast Falzar, you fight Falzar instead. Falzar is much easier than Gregar. She only has 2000 HP and her attacks are not as ruthless. She'll still give you a run for your money, though. She has a whirlwind attack with a similar pattern to Gregar's shock attack, a rain of talons accompanied by a gust that makes it harder to navigate the field, a 2-panel-wide tornado attack, and the trickiest one to deal with, the flaming birds which go down all 3 rows. Falzar is definitely easier than Gregar. Her arsenal is easier to manage, it's easier to find openings to hit her, and the rhythm of the fight is easier to understand. However, it's still a fight that requires patience and punishes you for being greedy. And by this game's standards, it's actually pretty hard. And so, Colonel and Iris sacrifice themselves to defeat the Cybeasts for good, the World 3 base explodes, and everyone gets their happy ending. Well, I mean, except for Colonel and Iris, obviously. But that's it. That ends the series. Okay, you know we can't end it there, right? There's still one last fight we need to have. Proto Man is just as difficult as you'd expect him to be. He has a long sword and wide sword attacks, he can teleport attack, he's fast, he hits often, and he's difficult to manage. But the use of wide swords, targeting chips, and the slash cross really make this fight go by a lot quicker. I could add more, but I'd just be rehashing what I've said the last 5 times. Proto Man is one of the most fun fights in the game, but he's still not as fun as his Battle Network 2 and Battle Network 3 forms. That being said, this is probably the best Proto Man fight of the latter 3 games. Is this the best Proto Man match? No. Is it a good Proto Man match? Yes. And now we're done. The ending to this game has always been bittersweet to me. Personally, I don't like how perfect it tries to be. Everyone gets their happy ending, everything is wrapped up in a neat little bow, and that's it. It feels shallow to me, especially considering how unnecessary the second trilogy is. Battle Network 3 had the perfect ending to the series, yet they kept going, and from 4 to 6, the storylines got dumber, the plot devices became less believable, and the characters became more like tropes than they already were. The first 3 games told a story. Not a perfect story, but a story. And that's all it needed. The last 3 games felt like the series trudging along like a zombie. 4 was poorly made, and honestly it felt like filler. 5 was decent but forgettable, and 6 is good, but not great. Still has a lot of issues that plague the second trilogy. It's the best of the latter 3 games, but it's not as good as 2 and 3. I could play the first 3 games over and over again. I really can't say that about the latter 3. And so that'll do it for Battle Network 6 and the Battle Network series. This is definitely the easiest game in the series, and the shortest game as well. For reference, it took me 31 hours to beat both versions of Battle Network 5, and only took me 25 hours for these games. So, if you enjoyed the video, please do the algorithm-engaging things like liking and commenting, and if you want to subscribe, that'd be great. And regardless, I hope I see you in my next video.